Once you understand this concept, you will become a master of your pelvic floor symptoms. I'm Dr. Kylie, a pelvic floor physical therapist that specializes in prenatal and postpartum exercise. Let's get into it. Whether you're dealing with leaking, prolapse, or pain, this is something that you need to understand. Your pelvic floor muscles are muscles. They like movement, and they need to be able to do a variety of movements. Many people, when thinking about the pelvic floor, think that it's all about contracting or doing a Kegel. I find that so many women are stuck in a state of tension or contracting, and that is what is causing their pelvic floor symptoms. Your pelvic floor muscles need to be able to relax and lengthen and contract, and they really shouldn't be stuck in a state of tension or contraction at all times. And that's actually where pelvic dysfunction can originate from. So let's discuss the 3 movements that your pelvic floor needs to be able to do. And once you learn how to do these, you're going to be able to incorporate it into your exercises. Number 1 is a Kegel. This is something that most people are familiar with. This is when you're contracting your pelvic floor. And if you don't know how to do that, think of holding in urine or holding in a tube. And you can try that right now. If you're having a difficult time feeling it, you can put a rolled up towel and sit on it and try to get some feedback there. Think of bringing that towel up towards you. That's contracting or doing a Kegel. Now the opposite is going to be lengthening those muscles, and it's the opposite of what you just did. So can you think of initiating a stream of urine or initiating or letting out a toot? You can try that. The lengthening piece is something that I find most people either cannot do at all or just have a very difficult time doing it. And it requires a lot of practice. Again, you can get a rolled up towel and you can think of separating your sits bones or just letting your pelvic floor melt into the towel as you try to lengthen. And the third state is going to be one of relaxation. So this is where your pelvic floor muscles should be living most of the day. Now, if let's say you're doing work on your computer and you find yourself, which I often do, clenching your lower abdomen or sucking in your belly subconsciously, when you find yourself doing that, your pelvic floor muscles are not in a state of relaxation. So be really conscious of what's going on with your lower abdomen. Make sure you're not sucking in, and try to really focus on just letting your pelvic floor muscles just rest and relax. Now we're going to take it a step further and tie in the breathing with the movement. Being able to coordinate your breath with your pelvic floor movement is key, especially if you are dealing with symptoms of leaking or a prolapse. Whenever you take a nice deep inhale, your diaphragm contracts down, and then when you exhale, your diaphragm comes back up, and your pelvic floor mirrors that movement. So we want to try to initiate a pelvic floor lengthening with a deep inhale and an exhale with a contracting. This can be hard, so take your time with it and just know that it requires a lot of practice. The way I like to teach people how to do this is in a laying down position. So we're going to lay on your back. Okay, and now from here, just go ahead and you can splay your knees out to the side if that's comfortable, or put some pillows under your knees here, or you can just have your knees up like this. Now, can you think of inhaling and letting your pelvic floor muscles lengthen, or think of blowing a balloon up and letting those pelvic floor muscles drop to the ground? So inhale and exhale, squeeze and lift. Inhale, exhale, squeeze and lift. So another visual I like to give, because I think visualization is so important when doing pelvic floor lengthening and contracting. You can think of, let's say at its neutral state, at its relaxed state, your pelvic floor muscles are sitting at level 1. When you inhale and lengthen, you're letting your pelvic floor muscles drop to the basement. When you exhale and contract, those pelvic floor muscles are coming up to level 2. And if you did do a little ultrasound of your pelvic floor muscles, you should be able to see that movement happening with the pelvic floor. It's very, very hard to feel for a lot of people, and it's a very subtle movement. So you really have to try to tune into your body and be aware of what is happening, which again can take some time. So now that you know the movements of the pelvic floor, how do you tie it in to your exercises? Let's say you're doing something like a bridge, where you are laying on your back and lifting your hips up like this. Now, a good question that I often get from people is, do I need to be doing a Kegel? Do I need to be contracting my pelvic floor when I'm exercising? And for most people, the answer is no. You don't need to be actively thinking about trying to contract your pelvic floor or doing a Kegel. And the reason is because your pelvic floor muscles will innately or reflexively kind of contract when they should be contracting, and they'll contract when certain muscle groups are contract, specifically your adductors, your inner thighs, and your deep core, and your glutes. But if you are someone who is really struggling with your contraction, or let's say you have a really weak pelvic floor and you're trying to rehab your pelvic floor, I may suggest adding in a Kegel during the most effortful part of the movement. So let's take a bridge, for example. If I were doing a bridge, I would take a nice deep inhale and then exhale, squeeze and lift as I lift my hips up. Inhale down, exhale, squeeze and lift. So I am lifting my hips up, but I'm also trying to lift my pelvic floor. And doing a Kegel is not just a squeeze, it is a squeeze and a lift. So you want to think of squeezing your pelvic floor and lifting up towards your belly button. That doesn't mean that I'm sucking in my belly button. That doesn't mean that I'm curling my hips under like this. It needs to be isolated to the pelvic floor. So that is one way that you would add in these concepts of the pelvic floor movements with exercising. And once you understand these movements and you're aware of what it feels like in your own body, you'll have so much more control of your pelvic floor throughout the day so that you stop leaking or that you can work on your prolapse symptoms. But this is key to understanding. This is the first thing that I teach people how to do, is to lengthen, relax, and contract. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you in the next one.